What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected voices sits down for what should be a simple interview, only to face accusations that cross every line of decency? In just 38 seconds, a single comment from Joy Behar would turn a routine morning show appearance into one of the most shocking exits in daytime television history. Morgan Freeman walked onto the View set that morning the same way he'd walked onto hundreds of talk show stages before, calm, collected, that signature smile that had charmed audiences for decades. The audience applauded as he settled into the guest chair, ready to discuss his latest film project and his decades-long career in Hollywood. But what started as a friendly conversation was about to spiral into something nobody in that studio could have predicted. Joy Behar opened with what seemed like standard questions. "So Morgan, thank you for being here. Let's talk about your new movie." Freeman nodded, his demeanor relaxed and welcoming. "Thank you for having me." "Yes, the film is something I'm very proud of. It's a story about redemption, about second chances." The conversation flowed normally for the first few minutes. Freeman discussed his role, the director's vision, working with the cast. The other hosts chimed in with their own questions, and everything seemed perfectly pleasant. But then Joy steered the conversation in a different direction. "You know, Morgan, I have to ask you about something," Joy said, leaning forward with that look she gets when she's about to make what she thinks is a clever point. "You've been in this industry for so long. Don't you think maybe it's time to let some younger actors have the spotlight?" Freeman's smile faded slightly, but he remained composed. "Well, Joy, I don't think age should determine whether someone continues to work. If you're good at what you do, if you still have stories to tell, why should you stop? But don't you think you're taking roles away from younger people who need the work?" Joy pressed, her tone sharpening. "I don't see it that way," Freeman replied, his voice still measured. "There are plenty of roles for everyone. The industry is bigger than it's ever been. This isn't a zero-sum game." Joy wasn't backing down. "That's easy for you to say when you're already established, already wealthy. What about the struggling actors who can't get their foot in the door because people like you won't step aside?" The other hosts shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the playful banter that usually characterized The View. This was starting to feel like an interrogation. Freeman took a breath, clearly trying to remain patient. "Joy, I've worked for 50 years to get where I am. I started at the bottom just like everyone else. I drove cabs, I struggled, I took small parts. Nobody handed me anything, and I don't think I should have to apologize for still wanting to work at my craft." "But you have to admit you have privilege now," Joy shot back. "You're Morgan Freeman. You could retire tomorrow and live comfortably for the rest of your life. Why are you so greedy for more?" The word greedy hung in the air like a slap. Freeman's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. "Greedy? I love what I do. This isn't about money. It's about passion. It's about the art." "Oh, please," Joy said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Every rich person says it's not about the money. Meanwhile, there are talented young actors waiting tables because you won't give up the throne." "I'm not sitting on any throne," Freeman said, his voice growing firmer. "I'm simply continuing to do the work I love, just like you're doing right now, Joy. Should you retire and give your seat to a younger host?" The audience gasped at the comparison. Joy's face reddened. "That's completely different." "How is it different?" Freeman asked, genuinely curious now. "You're established. You're successful. By your logic, shouldn't you step aside for someone younger who needs the opportunity?" "I'm still relevant," Joy snapped. "I'm connected to what's happening in the world." "And I'm not?" Freeman's voice remained calm, but there was an edge to it now. "You're suggesting that because of my age, I'm no longer relevant? That I no longer have anything to offer?" Joy seemed to realize she'd backed herself into a corner, so she pivoted. "Look, I'm just saying that maybe the stories Hollywood tells should be told by fresher voices. Your generation had your time. Maybe it's time to pass the torch." "My generation?" Freeman repeated. "Joy, you're only a few years younger than me. Are you saying you should also pass the torch? Again, that's different." Joy insisted, though she couldn't quite articulate how. One of the other hosts tried to intervene, attempting to steer the conversation towards safer waters. "Let's talk about the message of your new film, Morgan. You mentioned redemption, but Joy wasn't finished. No, I want to address this. Morgan, don't you think there's something a little self-centered about clinging to fame when you've already had such a long career?" Freeman's patience was visibly wearing thin. "Self-centered? Joy. I show up, I do my job, I tell stories. I'm not clinging to anything. I'm participating in an industry that still wants me. If audiences didn't want to see me in films, I wouldn't be cast. It's that simple. But you're taking up space, Joy pressed on, her voice rising. Space that could go to someone who hasn't had their chance yet. I'm taking up space? Freeman's voice carried a note of disbelief now. Joy, do you hear yourself? You're basically saying I should disappear because I've been successful for too long. That's not how any of this works. That's not how any industry works. Well, maybe it should work that way, Joy retorted. Maybe we need mandatory retirement ages for actors. Maybe we need to force people out so new talent can emerge. The audience was dead silent. Now. The other host looked mortified. This had gone from uncomfortable to completely inappropriate. Freeman sat back in his chair, studying Joy with a look of profound disappointment. You want to force people out? He said slowly. You want to tell people that once they reach a certain age, their contributions no longer matter. Their experience, their skill, their passion, none of it counts anymore because they've simply existed too long. That's not what I'm saying, Joy backtracked weakly. That's exactly what you're saying, Freeman countered. You're saying that my worth as an actor, as an artist, has an expiration date, and apparently, according to you, I've passed it. I just think there should be room for everyone, Joy said, trying to sound reasonable now. There is room for everyone, Freeman replied. But you're not arguing for inclusion. You're arguing for exclusion. My exclusion, specifically. Because you've decided I've had enough success, enough time in the spotlight. Joy's frustration was boiling over now. She wasn't used to guests pushing back this effectively. You know what, Morgan? Maybe the problem is that your ego won't let you see when it's time to step back. Maybe you're so used to being celebrated that you can't handle the idea of not being the center of attention anymore. That was the line. That was the moment everything changed. Freeman's expression hardened. The disappointment in his eyes transformed into something else entirely. Not anger exactly, but a kind of dignified resolve. My ego, he repeated quietly. Joy, I came here to talk about a film about second chances and human dignity. Instead, you've spent the last several minutes telling me that I'm too old, too greedy, too self-centered, and too egotistical to deserve to keep working. You've insulted my character, my work ethic, and my right to pursue my profession. I didn't mean, Joy started, but Freeman held up a hand. No, let me finish. You sit here, on your platform, with your audience, and you decide who's worthy and who's not. You decide who should work and who should retire. You make these judgments without knowing anything about the person you're talking to beyond what you've decided they represent in your mind. His voice was steady, but the emotion behind it was unmistakable. I've been acting for over 50 years. I've poured my heart and soul into this craft. I've told stories that mattered, that moved people, that made them think and feel. And I'm not done yet. I may never be done. Because this is who I am. This isn't a job to me. It's my life's work. It's my calling. Joy tried to interrupt again. Morgan, I think you're being overly sensitive about this. Overly sensitive? Freeman's eyebrows rose. You've just spent 15 minutes telling me I should essentially retire and disappear, and you think I'm being overly sensitive for taking offense at that? I'm just trying to have an honest conversation about ageism in Hollywood, Joy defended herself, somehow trying to position herself as the progressive voice in this exchange. No, Freeman said firmly. You're perpetrating ageism. You're embodying it. You're sitting here telling me that because of my age, I should step aside. That's the definition of ageism. You're not fighting against it. You're promoting it. The other hosts were frozen. The crew behind the cameras didn't know where to look. The audience sat in stunned silence. This was not how View interviews typically went. Joy's face was flushed now, a mixture of embarrassment and defensiveness. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but I stand by what I said. I think Hollywood needs to make room for new voices. It does, Freeman agreed. But not by pushing out the old ones, by expanding, by creating more opportunities, by telling more diverse stories. Not by implementing some sort of age-based purge where anyone over 60 is told they're no longer valuable. That's not what I'm suggesting, Joy said, though it was clearly exactly what she'd been suggesting. Then what are you suggesting, Joy? Please, explain it to me. Because from where I'm sitting, you've made it very clear that you think I should stop acting. That my continued presence in films is somehow harmful, that I'm being greedy and egotistical for wanting to keep doing what I love. Joy fumbled for words. I'm just saying that, maybe there should be some consideration for balance. for making sure everyone gets opportunities. Everyone except me, apparently, Freeman said. Everyone except people you've decided have had enough. You're twisting my words, Joy accused. I'm repeating your words, Freeman corrected. You called me greedy. You said I was clinging to fame. You suggested I had an ego problem. You said I was taking up space that belonged to others. Those were your words, Joy. Not mine. Another host tried once more to salvage the situation. Maybe we should take a quick break and come back to. But Freeman was already standing up. No, I don't think a break is going to fix this. Joy has made her position clear. She thinks I should stop working. She thinks my age makes me less valuable, less relevant. And you know what? I don't need to sit here and be insulted like this. Morgan, please sit down, Joy said, suddenly realizing how bad this looked. We're just having a discussion. A discussion? Freeman's voice was incredulous. Joy, you've attacked me personally multiple times. You've questioned my integrity, my motivations, my right to continue my career. That's not a discussion. That's a character assassination. I think you're overreacting, Joy said, which was possibly the worst thing she could have said at that moment. Freeman shook his head slowly. And I think you're revealing something about yourself that maybe you didn't intend to reveal. You talk about making room for others, about fairness and opportunity. But what you abisited really want is the power to decide who deserves success and who doesn't, who should work and who shouldn't. And you've decided that I don't deserve to keep doing what I love. That's not fair, Joy protested. What's not fair is what you've done here today, Freeman replied. What's not fair is inviting someone onto your show and then spending the entire time tearing them down. What's not fair is disguising your own prejudices as progressive thinking. He began removing his microphone. The audio technicians started to move toward him, but he waved them off, handling it himself. I came here in good faith. I came here to talk about a film I'm proud of, to share something meaningful with your audience. Instead, I got ambushed with your opinions about how I should live my life. Morgan, you're making a big deal out of nothing, Joy said, her tone now somewhere between dismissive and desperate. Nothing? Freeman paused, microphone in hand. Joy, you told me I'm too old to keep acting. You called me greedy for wanting to continue my career. You suggested I have an ego problem because I haven't retired yet. You said I'm taking opportunities away from others by simply existing in this industry. And you think that's nothing? I didn't mean it personally, Joy tried to backtrack. How else could I possibly take it? Freeman asked. You directed all of those comments at me, personally. You looked me in the eye and said all of those things. How is that not personal? Joy was floundering now. I was trying to have a broader conversation about the industry. Then have that conversation with the industry, Freeman said. Don't use me as your punching bag to make whatever point you think you're making. Don't invite me here under the pretense of discussing my work and then turn it into an attack on my right to continue working. It wasn't an attack, Joy insisted weakly. Yes, it was, Freeman said with absolute certainty. And you know it was. And everyone watching knows it was. You crossed a line, Joy. Multiple lines, actually. He set the microphone down on the table with careful deliberation. I've been in this business for a long time. I've done thousands of interviews. I've been asked difficult questions, challenging questions, uncomfortable questions. But I've never been disrespected quite like this. I've never had someone sit across from me and tell me that my continued existence in my profession is a problem that needs to be solved. Morgan, please, Joy said, and for the first time, she actually sounded genuinely concerned about how this was unfolding. Let's just reset and start over. Start over? Freeman looked at her with something close to pity. Joy, you can't unsay what you've said. You can't take back those insults. And honestly, I don't think you even understand why they were insulting. You think you were being provocative, edgy, asking the tough questions. But what you were really being was cruel. Cruel? Joy repeated, offended. That's ridiculous. Is it? Freeman challenged. You told me I should stop doing what I love because you've decided I've done it long enough. You told me I'm being selfish for not retiring. You questioned my character and my motivations. If that's not cruel, I don't know what is. The other hosts sat in absolute silence. The cameras kept rolling. The audience didn't make a sound. Everyone seemed to understand they were witnessing something unprecedented. I have dedicated my life to this craft, Freeman continued, his voice heavy with emotion now. I have given everything I have to being the best actor I can be. I have worked tirelessly, constantly pushing myself to grow and improve. And I'm not done. I may never be done, because this is who I am. This is my purpose. And I don't need your permission to continue pursuing it. I never said you needed my permission, Joy objected. No, but you made it very clear that you disapprove, Freeman said. That you think I should stop. That you've judged me and found me guilty of the crime of being too successful for too long. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Freeman held up his hand again. You know what the saddest part of all this is? You could have used this platform to celebrate longevity in the arts. You could have had a meaningful conversation about how we can create more opportunities for emerging talent while still honoring and utilizing the experience and wisdom of established artists. But instead, you chose to make it adversarial. You chose to frame it as if my success somehow diminishes others. I think we're talking past each other, Joy tried. No, Joy. I heard you perfectly clearly, and I think you heard me too. You just don't like what I'm saying because it's holding up a mirror to what you did here today. He picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. I'm going to leave now. Not because you've won some argument, not because you've convinced me of anything, but because I have too much respect for myself to sit here and continue to be treated this way. Morgan, I really think you're overreacting to what was meant to be a spirited discussion, Joy said, making one last attempt to frame this as anything other than what it was. Freeman paused at the edge of the stage and turned back to face her. Joy, I've been called a lot of things in my life. Some good, some bad, but I've never been called greedy for wanting to continue practicing my craft. I've never been told I'm taking up too much space by simply existing in my profession. And I've never been accused of having an ego problem because I haven't voluntarily ended my career to satisfy someone else's idea of fairness. His voice softened slightly. I genuinely hope you take some time to think about what happened here today, not for my sake, but for yours. Because if this is how you treat your guests, if this is how you conduct your interviews, you're going to find that fewer and fewer people will want to come on this show. Are you threatening me? Joy asked, her defensiveness flaring up again. No, Freeman said calmly. I'm giving you honest feedback, which, ironically, is what you claimed you were doing for me. The difference is, I'm doing it with respect. And with that, Morgan Freeman walked off the view stage. No dramatic storming off, no shouting, no throwing things. Just a dignified exit by a man who had been pushed too far and had the self-respect to remove himself from a toxic situation. The cameras caught Joy's face as Freeman left. She looked stunned, perhaps finally realizing the magnitude of what had just transpired. The other hosts exchanged glances, clearly unsure how to proceed. The audience remained silent, processing what they'd just witnessed. In the years since, that moment has been analyzed, discussed, and debated. But the facts remain clear. Morgan Freeman came to The View, expecting a standard interview. Instead, he faced a barrage of ageist commentary disguised as thoughtful discourse. He defended himself with grace, intelligence, and dignity. And when the disrespect became too much, he did what any person with self-respect would do. He left. The entire exchange lasted less than 20 minutes. But in that brief window, audiences saw two very different approaches to conflict. Joy Behar, aggressive and dismissive, unable or unwilling to recognize when she'd crossed lines. And Morgan Freeman, patient and articulate, standing up for himself without losing his composure until the moment when staying would have meant accepting unacceptable treatment. What made this moment so powerful wasn't just the conflict itself, it was the way it revealed character. Freeman's character had been questioned throughout the interview, yet in the end, it was his character, his unwavering sense of dignity and self-worth that shone through. He didn't need to raise his voice or resort to personal attacks. He simply stated his truth firmly and clearly, and then removed himself from a situation that had become untenable. For viewers watching at home, the message was clear. You don't have to accept being disrespected, even on national television, even by someone who has a platform and an audience. You can stand up for yourself with grace. You can defend your right to pursue your passion without apologizing for your success. And you can walk away from situations that demean you with your head held high. Morgan Freeman taught a masterclass that day, but it wasn't about acting. It was about self-respect, about knowing your worth, and about refusing to let anyone make you feel less than you are, regardless of the setting or circumstances. And that's a lesson that resonated far beyond the entertainment industry, far beyond questions about age and opportunity in Hollywood. It was a universal truth, delivered by one of cinema's most respected voices, in a moment that no one who witnessed it will ever forget.